big ideas, and the people who make our state shine. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB.
House Education will now come to order. Good morning to all of you. If anyone is going to testify that hasn't signed in the back, one of the pages could help you sign in digitally. Also, you can sign in digitally on your phone, actually, too. And speaking of cell phones, which is going to be the subject of our conversation, make sure that you shut your cell phones off so that there's no distractions. With that, Mr. Secretary, please call the roll.
Representative Garcia. Here. DeGroot. Here. Halverson, excused. Rice. Here. Schwanz.
Here.
Baxter. Here. Heerman.
Here.
Ismay, excused. Arland.
Here.
Jordan.
Here.
Uribulk.
Here.
Knowles.
Here.
Manhart.
Here.
Stevens.
Here.
Greenfield.
Here.
Madam Chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes, please.
Second.
There is a motion by Representative DeGroot, and there is a second by Representative Rice. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. They are approved. We are going to have our pages come up, please, and tell us who you are, where you're from, what you plan to do, and what you have enjoyed the most last week when you came out here. One thing.
My name is Raquel Mitchell-Kaup. I am from Holven. My plans are to go to Lake Area Technical College for dental assisting, and my favorite part of what I've learned so far is probably just learning the process and how the government actually works.
Thank you. Good morning to you.
Good morning. My name's Isla Rohde. I'm from Sturgis, and my plans after high school are to be a pilot. My favorite thing from last week is probably sitting in floor session and committees and hearing all the bills and testimonies.
And thank you very much, girls, for being here and for being willing to help out as well as you have. We hope that this week will be as equally enjoyable for you as last week was. We have a bunch of educators here this morning. Good morning to you and welcome. It's good to see so many shining faces this morning. We are going to have the one bill today, and that is House Bill 190 or Senate Bill 198. And we are going to begin right away with proponent testimony. What we propose to do is to have 15 minutes proponent, 15 minutes opponent, and then we'll have time to ask questions and discuss. Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Taylor Rayfelt, and I'm a representative out of District 14 in Sioux Falls. I'm here today, though, not just as a legislator, but as a mom of 3 and a nurse who has spent her career caring for people at their most vulnerable moments. Everything I do in this building comes back to one simple question: are we protecting kids? As a mother, I want my children to walk into a school building that is safe, focused, and built for learning. As a healthcare provider, I want them in environments to support their mental and emotional health. I do not want our kids in environments that amplify anxiety, comparison, distraction, or stress. Right now, we know that constant access to smartphones during the school day undermines these goals. National educator surveys show that over 90% of teachers say that student mental health challenges have increased, and a large majority identify cell phones and social media as a major contributor to distraction and behavioral health issues in the classroom. Teachers across the country also report that managing devices is one of their top classroom disruptions that they face. These numbers matter because when teachers are policing phones, they're not teaching reading. When they're breaking up Snapchat conflicts, they're not building math skills. When students are scrolling between classes, they're not connecting with peers face to face. And the data actually backs this up. Research from the London School of Economics found that when schools implemented cell phone bans, student test scores improved, especially under lower performing students, with gains equivalent to adding extra instructional time. This is not theoretical, it is actually measurable. We also know that student mental health is under strain. CDC data shows that 1 in 3 high school students reports persistent feelings of sadness or hopelessness. Frequent social media use is associated with higher rates of bullying, including cyberbullying, and increased depressive symptoms. As a nurse, I can tell you that constant digital stimulation and comparison culture does not create a resilient nervous system. It creates stress responses. And schools should not be a place that fuels the stress response. It should be a place where kids can breathe, where they can learn without notifications lighting up their pockets, where they can make eye contact, where they can fail and grow without an audience. Now, some will say that we should limit phones only during instructional time, or that 95% of schools already have policies in place about cell phones. But here's the reality that teachers will tell you. Partial policies just don't work. If phones are allowed between classes, at lunch, and in the hallways, that's where the conflict actually starts. That's where photos are taken in the bathroom. That's where social media posts spiral. That's where group texts meant to exclude are started. And then the disruption walks right back into the classroom where students are meant to learn. A bell-to-bell policy creates clarity. It removes gray areas, it removes daily arguments, it supports teachers, and it protects kids for the entire school day. This doesn't mean no exceptions. Medical needs, IEP accommodations, emergencies, of course those are covered, but we can do this thoughtfully and responsibly. What we cannot do is pretend that leaving phones in students' hands for 7 hours a day is neutral. It is not neutral. It affects focus, it affects discipline, it affects anxiety level, and most importantly, it affects academic outcomes. South Dakota has historically performed above the national average on NAEP assessments, but reading proficiency has declined in recent years, just like across the country. We cannot afford additional instructional loss. Every minute matters, especially for students that are struggling. As someone who has fought to protect children and strengthen mental health systems in this state, I believe this is one of those moments where we choose courage over convenience. This is not about punishing students, it is about protecting them. It is about giving teachers the environment that they deserve. It is about restoring attention to classrooms. It's about telling parents during the school hours, your child is in a protected space. As a mom, I want my kids to be in a protected space. As a nurse, I know our kids need to be in a protected space. And as a legislator, I believe it is our responsibility to provide that protected space. I respectfully ask for your support of a bell-to-bell school cell phone policy. Let's protect our kids, let's protect their learning, and let's protect their future. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. The representative covered quite a bit of information, so if you have new things to present, go ahead with that so we don't have an overlap here. Good morning, Senator.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of House Education. Thanks for having us this morning. Senate Bill 198, for me, is a conversation about more than cell phones. It's about whether the state of South Dakota.
I'm sorry, could you
Chris
introduce?
Carr, Senator District 11, I apologize.
No, that's fine. Go ahead now.
So this conversation is about whether South Dakota is willing to lead when the well-being of our children is at stake. I respect the concerns about local control. In this state, we take that principle very seriously. Our school boards are engaged, they're thoughtful, and they're committed. But there are moments when an issue rises beyond district lines. When it touches every community, every classroom, and every family. When this happens, it becomes a matter of statewide responsibility. The mental health and academic well-being of our children is one of those moments. So several years ago, we started this conversation about cell phones in schools, and at the time, there's a lot of anecdotal conversations. You know, this is what I'm observing. Here's what some states are doing. Since then, we had a summer study 3 years ago, I believe it was 3 years ago, and this was one of the topics we discussed. We drafted some legislation. We didn't move forward with it. We thought, well, we'll ask the school districts to put a policy in place. Last year, I think there was a resolution asking for policies to be put into place. The last 2 years, I've had the opportunity to travel and focus on this area of tech and with our kids and our society, and it's more than anecdotal. The research is in. There's a great deal of it out there. I've provided you with some of that and some of those sources to show what is actually happening. They measure it scientifically. There's neuroscientists that are studying this topic, and what we're talking about is the mental health aspect. And part of this, I'm just going to identify a few of the issues. The mental health and the dopamine loop, the dopamine addiction. Phones are engineered for constant stimulation, for short attention bursts, instant reward cycles, and social comparison. Students are not just using phones, many are developing addictive behaviors that are tied to that dopamine feedback loop. That's why folks get caught doing that zombie scroll. They just have to have it going. Even when they're in conversations, even if they're watching something on TV, they got to have that going. It gives them that little bit of dopamine kick. When a student checks notifications during class, lunch, or passing periods, they reinforce those distraction patterns. It reduces the attention span. It increases anxiety and social comparison. If we acknowledge that smartphones can negatively impact mental health outside of the school, why would we allow that same impact inside of our schools? The one place designed for structured growth. I look at it as a pipeline. We have 12 years, and this is the professional setting for students and young people. When they come out of there, they enter the real world. We have pages with us in session. We have interns, and they have cell phone policies. I have yet to see a page be on their cell phone during the day here at the Capitol in my time. Maybe I've missed it. But that professional, that pipeline coming into the professional world for 12 years, what are we teaching our kids? What bad habits are we allowing them to engage in with the social media, with their cell phones during those professional settings? School is that professional setting. What are we allowing in the classrooms? We want our teachers to be successful. We're challenging the performance of our school districts and our schools, yet we're going to allow distractions in those classrooms. I don't understand. It doesn't reconcile for me. Talk about healthy relationships and sociability. Young people need face-to-face interaction. Conflict resolution skills need to be developed. Real conversations. Instead, we see students at lunch on their phones, in the hallways on their phones, in the classroom thinking about their phone. Why didn't this person get back to me? Oh, I can't believe these people said this to me. They're thinking about that. They're distracted with that dopamine loop, waiting to get out and use that phone. A bell-to-bell policy encourages real socialization. It builds those communication skills. It strengthens peer relationships and reduces the cyber drama during those school hours. So I've heard educators talk about distractions in the school. When those phones are present, attentions are fragmented. Instruction time is interrupted. The teachers become phone monitors instead of actually focusing on education. The discipline issues are increased. So I'm going to try to wrap it up here, Madam Chair. What I'd like to say is that when you have something like a public safety standard, it would be best to have that be consistent across our state, so those protections are for all of our students in the state of South Dakota. Not all districts have clear policies, as was touched on. A state framework ensures every student has the same standard, every educator has clarity, parents understand expectations, and enforcement is consistent. It's about making sure that all students in the state operate under a clear, structured learning policy. What is best for the student? Let's ask ourselves that. I hear about, well, what's best for the district? What's best for the parents? What's best for the student in the education and learning environment that we're putting teachers and students in? That's what I'd ask you to focus on today. I'll stand by. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator. Other proponent testimony? Yeah, we've got about 5 minutes or so left. Yeah, good morning to you. Just identify yourself and begin.
Yes, good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Melissa McKay. I am the president of the Digital Childhood Institute and the policy director for the Child First Policy Center. I've worked on child online policy for nearly a decade, advancing more than a dozen legislative efforts and filing extensive FTC complaints against Apple and Google. I'm also the mother to 5 children. I'm from Utah, where for years local school districts were allowed to set their own phone policies. Some districts adopted stricter rules, others implemented classroom-only limits. Many left enforcement largely up to individual teachers. We learned something very important in Utah. It doesn't work. This year, Utah passed a bell-to-bell ban nearly unanimously. After trying the patchwork approach, we realized it creates inconsistency and leaves students in more lenient districts with fewer protections. The research proves this. Because we're out of time, I'm not going to get into the research, but there are packets, many child safety advocates who've put out packets as thick as this, with study after study proving that bell-to-bell is the most protective system for students, and having a patchwork approach is going to harm the most vulnerable students. I'm going to end with a brief story. One of the reasons I got into advocacy 10 years ago was because I had a family member, my nephew, who was exposed to pornography on another student's device in school. So one of the problems with not having a bell-to-bell ban is that kids are walking around with smartphones, which are supercomputers, in their pockets. And the reason I'm actually here in South Dakota is for a different bill about regulating smartphones and app stores, because parental controls are terrible. They don't work. There are loopholes everywhere. So kids are walking around with not only access to YouTube and the entire internet, but basically Playboy magazines in their pockets. So my young nephew was exposed on another student's device, which led to years of compulsive pornography seeking and therapy, which really devastated my sister, because at home, she had tried to protect him from everything. They had strict limits, they had filters, they had everything. But when he got to school, he was entirely unprotected, just because other students were allowed to carry around smartphones and have them out during the day, during class. He was exposed in the back of a classroom during school. There's nothing my sister could have done to protect him from that. So I would end urgently asking that you support this bell-to-bell ban. Not only does it protect students from each other, it protects teachers, their ability to teach, it protects tax dollars, and ensuring that every dollar is well used and there are no distractions. Thank you.
Thank you. Absolutely. Absolutely. Other proponents? Good morning.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the House Education Committee, Sandra Waltman with the South Dakota Education Association. First, I would like to thank Representative Rayfeld and Senator Carr for bringing this legislation. I don't want to tread on a lot of what they've already spoke to, but I will say that Senate Bill 198, while most school districts do have a cell phone policy, teachers will tell you that enforcement is one of the issues. Senate Bill 198 sets a clear statewide guideline, but still respects local control. And finally, one of the things that we would like to bring up is open communication with parents in the community is important for making these restrictions work. Senate Bill 198 will help start a conversation, a very important conversation across the state. It makes it clear that following a cell phone rules is important for student learning. This bill is not meant to punish anybody. It is about protecting learning time, supporting teachers, and creating spaces where students can stay focused and do well. We ask you to support Senate Bill 198.
Thank you. We'll move on to the online testimony. Michelle, are you there?
I am. Good morning, Chairman
Good morning.
Greenfield.
Just go ahead and identify yourself and begin your testimony. I think you've heard some of the material already, so try not to overlap.
I have, yes, Chairman. For the record, my name is Michelle Axman. I serve as a state senator in North Dakota, representing District 7, and I was the prime sponsor of North Dakota's cell phone policy, which was a statewide bell-to-bell ban on all personal electronic devices. And I'm really excited to be here today to share, after one semester of implementation in North Dakota, the positive impacts and feedback we've received from our statewide policy. I'll keep it brief, but I'll kind of go through the different groups that we have heard from and the results that we have been given from our different school districts across the state. I obviously can't say that everyone was on board with the policy when we introduced it, just like you guys are hearing today. However, since we've been one semester in, I can honestly say we have had 0 complaints and only positive feedback from all of our schools. In fact, some of our schools who were maybe a little bit more on the fence with that, their school leaders and district superintendents have now started looking at how they can further the policy for next year and look at moving curriculum offline and going maybe free from electronics for the whole school day in terms of tablets as well. Probably the most exciting thing that I'd like you to take away as a fellow legislator is we've now gotten the data back on polling across the state. And as many of you probably saw, North Dakota was fortunate enough to pass a $1,600 property tax credit for all primary residences in North Dakota. However, our cell phone policy has actually pulled higher approval ratings across the state with voters than even that passage of that legislation. We have now seen 94% positive polling across our state on the bell-to-bell cell phone ban. We have never seen a piece of legislation pull higher than that across the state. So it is favorable among teachers, parents, students, and school leaders. I've received countless phone calls and emails from parents and teachers saying how refreshing it is to see schools lit up with conversation and students alive connecting with friends again. Parents who said their kids have come home asking for them to teach them card games so they can play that during the lunch hour. I'm a high school girls golf coach, and even the girls are refreshingly seeing the positive impacts of connectivity during the school day. The local control has kind of been something that we've really enjoyed seeing, that each school district has been able to maintain a variety of ways that they've implemented the ban, and their policies are unique to fit the different districts across the state, as we see larger and smaller sizes like you do as well.
Could we just wrap it up now, please?
Yeah. Absolutely. So I can say from experience being 6 months into it in North Dakota, and I know we're not that much different you, it has only been positive impacts and positive feedback from all stakeholders across our state. So I am very supportive of what you guys are trying to do in South Dakota. Thank you
so much for your testimony. It's greatly appreciated. If you would want to stay online in case there's questions, I would appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Are there any others in the room that just want to say me too? Yeah, just come up and just
Yeah, real
get your
quick,
name
Madam
on
Chair.
there.
TJ Nelson from Sioux Falls, registered lobbyist for FGA Action. I just want to commend the senators on this. This is a very popular issue with the electorate. Florida, Indiana, Arkansas, North Dakota, several states have done this, and they've seen very positive results, so would encourage your support. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good morning. My name is Patty Duffy, and I am a locally elected school board member in the state, and I support this bill. Please vote yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? If there are no other proponents, let's close that area and move on to opponent testimony, please. Opponents? Good morning, Dr. Graves.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Thank you. I am Joe Graves, Secretary of Education for the state of South Dakota, and I'm asking that you send this bill to the 41st day, which is odd because I frankly agree with the premise on this issue. I don't think the school instructional time should be interrupted by the incessant demands of student or staff smartphones. I don't think that these things should be robbing people and distracting them such that they have to then come back and try to get back to the skill that they were on. The research has demonstrated again and again that this is a problem in schools. Add to that inappropriate content, cyberbullying, and the inane pull of social media, and how could you not want smartphones pulled out of the school setting? But that's not the issue before us right now. The issue before us is whether or not they should be eliminated from classrooms, but rather who gets to make that decision and who should best make that decision. The answer to that is educators at the local level. In South Dakota, we have a default setting on local control. We believe it because we know that the best decisions are made as close as possible to the problem. We believe it because there are few one-size-fits-all solutions. And we believe it because South Dakotans are ornery cusses who don't want to be told what to do, even when Father does know best. Over the last year or so, I've accompanied the First Lady and her staff to a number of schools to talk about grit and resiliency, and also to listen to people about smartphones. What we have found is that pretty much all schools are moving towards greater levels of restrictions, whether that be technology pouches, bans during classroom time with phones placed in cubbies at the classroom door, bans during passing times between classes and lunch, or even bans altogether from starting bell to starting bell. That's already happening in a number of schools. Some are further down the continuum, some a bit less so, but they're all on the same path. Given that, why would you violate local control? Why founder the ship of local control on the rocks when schools are already finding their way to a safe harbor? Trust the school boards and superintendents and principals and teachers on this one. This is a problem already well on its way to a solution. And if you want to accelerate that process, then go about the hard work of communicating to the local boards at the local level to pass greater restrictions. That's what we expect in South Dakota. Go district by district, county by county, and try to make your point. If you do that and you can get the process done, then that respects local control. It's not a respecting of local control to have a statewide ban and say, now you get to figure out how to put it into place. That local control is already gone. So please send this bill to the 41st day, and thank you, and I will stand by for questions.
Thank you, Dr. Graves. Other opponent testimony in the room. Good morning.
Morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee, Rob Munson, Executive Director for School Administrators of South Dakota. Folks, this bill is already yesterday's news. Most, if not all, districts across the state have already adopted thoughtful policies to address distractions while maintaining safe and productive learning environments. In fact, the summer study that Senator Carr referred to back in 2024 took a very hard look at this issue. I was asked by a member of that committee to survey our membership and see if bringing a cell phone statute would be beneficial. After surveying and providing the data, the committee, who was reviewing this, chose not to bring a bill forward forcing school districts to implement a statewide policy. And folks, these were South Dakota schools that were surveyed, not national. At that time, 102 districts responded to that survey. 94% already had a policy in place. 2% were working to put one in place at that time, and I'm confident more have added since. When asked in the survey if they, in their opinion, believed we needed a state-level policy or law, it was an overwhelming no. School boards working with parents, educators, and community members are in the best position to determine what is appropriate for their students based on grade level, building configuration, community expectations, and of course, instructional goals. A blanket prohibition during the entire school day removes the flexibility districts need to manage real-world situations. For example, high schools may permit limited use during passing during periods or lunch. Elementary schools may require phones to remain in lockers, and some teachers integrate personal devices into instructional activities under supervision. Subsection 2 does state an approved medical or educational accommodation. To those in the profession, an accommodation is either through a 504 plan or an IEP, not an educator's belief that they could use those devices. In my opinion, if this bill becomes law, it would be a violation of this law for Professor Jordan to ask his students on a field trip to take out their phone, take a picture of the animals, flora, or fauna on their field trip. It would also be a violation of law when Dr. Rice has a student use their phone to use dual authentication login for an online course they're enrolled in. We believe strong in maintaining orderly classrooms and minimizing distractions, but we also believe those decisions are best made at the local level by the school board members that have been elected and are accountable to those communities. For those reasons, Madam Chair, we would ask you respectfully send this bill to the 41st day. And if you truly want to help schools, let's ban cell phones from 4 in the afternoon till 8 o'clock the next morning, because that would help educators far more.
Thank you for your testimony. Other opponents? Good morning.
Morning, Madam Chairman. Mitch Richter, South Dakota United School Association. I don't have a lot to add after listening to Dr. Graves. He laid it out pretty well, and if you do the math on Senator, Representative, maybe lobbyist Munson, there's 4% of the school districts that don't have a policy, and I suspect after the 2024 interim study and the attention that the Senator and Representative brought to this cause, that 4% is also doing it. So if you like mandates, if you like to just add words to the code, this is a bill for you. I'd urge you to vote for it. But if you're not in favor of mandates and you think local school districts and local control can take care of this issue, I'd urge you to send it to the 41st day. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Other opponents?
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the House Education Committee. I'm Diana Miller, registered lobbyist for the large school group. And I certainly can't be as eloquent as lobbyist Rob Munson on giving you statistics and that, but I'm going to try a couple points that I would like to make sure you emphasize. First of all, with the large group of people in this room today, I want to give credit. I think you need to give credit to teachers controlling their classroom. They do it on a regular basis, and they do it on a consistent basis, and you need to trust that those teachers are controlling their classroom for the benefit of kids, benefit of mental health, benefit of socialization, and that's being done across this state. Second of all, we always have the issue of local control, and do we pay lip service to it or do we actually support it? And this is a case where you have that chance to support it. As you heard from the Secretary of Education, and the fact is, local school boards are doing their job. We are ahead of the curve. We were ahead of the curve 3 years ago when we heard Senator Carr talk about a committee that worked on and recommended use of the cell phone, and we implemented that. And now we're at 94, probably 95, maybe even closer % on doing that. I think also we were ahead of the curve in other states. I don't like to compare South Dakota necessarily to other states because we're unique here. We represent what South Dakota constituents want, and your constituents at the local level have every opportunity to present before the school board. And so I would ask that you send Senate Bill 198 to the 41st Legislative Day and really, truly support local control and the students and the teachers that control their classrooms. Thank you.
Thank you. Other opponent testimony? Are you from Kadoka? Yes. Okay, you've already testified, so we won't be taking your testimony again today. Sorry about that. Other opponent testimony. Last time, just as a matter of explanation, folks, the last time that we had committee, we did not hear this bill, Senate Bill 198, but I asked if there was anybody in the room that wanted to testify, and yes, Colby Schuck wanted to testify against it, and so we let him go ahead and do it at that time. Good morning.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Heath Larson, Executive Director, Associated School Boards of South Dakota. I too rise in opposition of Senate Bill 198 today. We agree with the premise of the bill and doing what's best for kids. As a former superintendent for 11 years, our biggest issue, or one of the biggest issues we dealt with, as was mentioned previously, was between approximately 5 p.m. and 8 o'clock a.m. the following day, and we dealt with that at school. This issue and best managed locally at the local level. The best form of government is government that's closest to the people. With that said, we would ask that you send this bill to the 41st day. Let this decision be made locally for our students in our school districts. Thank you. Please send this to the 41st day.
Thank you. Any other opponent testimony in the room? Good morning. Hello. Nobody? Okay. So we have a testifier online, and that testifier is named Lindsay. Are you there, Lindsay? Yes.
Yes, I am here.
Okay, go ahead and identify yourself and then begin your testimony. Thank you.
I am Lindsay Fettke. I'm the preschool through 12th grade principal at Avon, at the Avon District in South Dakota. I'm speaking today in opposition to Senate Bill 198. I agree with a lot of the things that people have already said in the room in opposition, so I won't repeat a lot of what they have already said. We are a school district that already has a cell phone policy in place. Our policy does not allow students to use their cell phones during instructional time. And our data has shown that our locally developed expectations that are consistently reinforced are working. We maintain clear expectations for the phone use. Our educators, and I believe as educators, it's our responsibility to prepare our students for life after high school. That preparation includes teaching responsibility, decision-making, and respectful use of technology. If devices are simply locked away, students are denied the opportunity to learn how to manage them appropriately in real-world settings. When students need to use their phones in our school, part of our policy is as they come and they ask me for permission, they use their phone on my steps, and then they go back into their lockers. This process builds communication skills, accountability, and an understanding of appropriate boundaries. It affects our kids in practical ways. Parents communicate with letting kids know, hey, you got to pick your siblings up today. Hey, this is a change in schedule. Hey, we have an emergency happening at home right now. And then kids can come communicate that with me. When I brought up kind of playing devil's advocate with our kids, saying, well, they could call the school and we could deliver the message for you. And my students look at me and say, Mrs. Fettke, we don't live back in the day. We live in the now. We have all of this available to us. Why are we not using it? And I would also like to just put into the teacher of the year, Becky Hempfler is from Avon. She just got back from spending a week with all the other teachers, and they were telling them how to implement different uses of technology in the classroom and how to make it more effective. We live in a very rural community, so many of my students are active in farming and ranching. And during calving season, I have a lot of students come ask to check their cameras on my steps. They don't do it at their lockers. They don't during class time. It's outside my office. And sometimes they have to leave because they have to go help at the farm and help take care of things. That's part of our agricultural life and their responsibilities of balancing home and school. I fully support the expectation that schools maintain policies addressing cell phone use, and I agree that phones should not interfere with instructional time. However, each district must have the authority to create, implement, and adjust those policies based on their local needs. When we observed an increase this year or last year in earbuds during class, we responded by modifying our guidelines. We require wired headphones now. So we identified a problem, we implemented a solution, and we monitored the results. This kind of responsive local decision-making is effective, and it should remain in the hands of the school. So thank you for letting me speak today and sharing my perspective.
Thank you very much. And if you would have time to stay online in case there are questions of the committee, we would appreciate that.
You bet.
Any other opponent testimony in the room? We have about 1 minute. Okay, I don't see any takers. So with that, we will move on to rebuttal.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Taylor Rayfeld, representative out of Sioux Falls. So I'm going to just go through the two main arguments that I heard against this. The first one was that 95% of schools already have a policy in place. It is true that many districts have some sort of cell phone policy, but most are not bell-to-bell consistent nor enforceable. And that's exactly the problem. When phones are allowed throughout the school day, students are glued to their phones rather than learning. Students film classmates during confrontations or fights and share online, and cyberbullying happens in real time, not after school. These problems aren't isolated incidents. They are patterns teachers and administrators report regularly. If existing policies worked, we wouldn't still see these issues interrupting instruction and impacting school safety. What this bill does is provide clarity and consistency so educators can focus on teaching rather than policing devices. The second thing that we heard about is that this should be local control. Local control is absolutely important, but it is not absolute. We already set statewide standards around student health and safety in many areas. Tobacco is prohibited on school grounds. Alcohol, health requirements are also set at the state level. We don't say local control when it comes to poisons like tobacco or alcohol because children's health is at stake. Constant access to phones during school has demonstrable harmful effects on mental health, learning, and student safety. Phones fuel cyberbullying during instructional hours. They encourage students to live on social feeds rather than their classrooms, and they increase distraction every time a notification pings, when research shows breaks concentration for up to 23 minutes. Protecting the classroom environment is no different than other statewide protections that we already codify. Additionally, this policy gives back local control. Why? Cell phones in schools take away control from the school and the teachers because they distract from learning. If we put this policy in place, the teachers and administrators are able to control what they should be, which is their curriculum and the student learning environments, not policing cell phone use. We aren't controlling, we are leading, and we are enabling schools to have the local control over what their school day is, which is learning. Finally, I just want to wrap up by this. I don't bring a bill unless I research the contents and the validity of the research that goes behind it. And I will tell you, I heavily researched this subject. I could not identify or find any piece of evidence that spoke about how cell phones in school have a benefit to the student. We've heard a lot of arguments about talking about the administrators or the supervisors. What we need to bring the conversation back is to the students and how this impacts them. Mental health challenges, bullying, the ability to learn in the classroom. Those are why we should be making this decision. The decision to take cell phones out of school at a statewide level puts learning back to the students, and it allows students to concentrate on what they should be, which is learning in the classroom and not concentrating on pings on their phone. Thank you.
Thank you. We will close that portion then of the testimony. And we have about maybe 10 minutes. We'll move on to committee questions. If you could try to frame your questions so that they're brief to the point. Representative Uribach.
This question's for the Prime.
Okay. For the Prime?
So my question is, what about Apple Watches, other tech, Google Glasses? I mean, it changes really fast.
Madam Chair, Senator Chris Carr, District 11. You know, there are increasing technologies. You know, we can't capture all those at this time. Right now, we know what's most prevalent is cell phones. You know, I don't know all of the smartwatches that are out there. Some of them work independently. Some of them work with a cell phone. The beauty of this bill that I think really threads the needle is to allow the school boards, you know, the school district, in communication with parents and feedback from the community, to look at what a bell-to-bell policy looks like and make sense for their area. So they might determine that it would include those other electronic devices. It allows those exceptions that have been talked about as well. So I'm hoping that this, as was also mentioned, you know, increases the awareness of the harm of these items, as well as the distraction to the learning process.
Thank you. Representative Baxter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Question for the Prime as well. I heard a few times in here regarding that the current policies aren't enforceable. Can you just explain how this one is enforceable and how it's different than what the other schools are already doing?
Madam Chair, Chris Carr, Senator District 11. Yeah, thank you for the question. You know, as we watch what's happening, and I haven't spoke to every school district, but I've spoken to many and superintendents. So there is a difference in different areas, different school districts. This tries to accommodate that, saying that the cell phone usage during the school day will be regulated, but also coming down to the discipline and enforcement, that's also decided by the school district. So they get to determine, you know, where does that phone reside during the day? Some use lockers, some use bags, some whatever they might leave it on the person. They get to have that decision making locally. They get to talk about what's the discipline and enforcement look like for that policy. Did I answer all your question?
Representative Stevens.
Yes, I have a question for Colby Shuck.
Colby? We didn't want to see you waste a trip.
Yes.
Could you identify yourself or where you're from?
Colby Shuck, Kadoka Middle School, High School Principal.
We had an issue, or one of the questions as far as the benefits of the technology with the cell phones. Can you kind of describe how that impacts your school?
Our school uses those technologies within the classroom where appropriate. Of course, it is all done with very much certainty, as they use them for things like research. They have this, one of the ones that I think I mentioned last time was the scavenger hunt, where the kids go around and they can use their phones to identify QR codes to get answers, and it really engages the students in that. Now, is this something that I think should be an open policy for? No, but it should be a local control. Locals should do this. I mean, this is, our policy is very open. And I will tell you is that we are ranked one of the top schools in both middle school and high school in the state of South Dakota, and according to our our SBI scores. So the thought that having a cell phone is going to make kids dumber, in our case, it isn't. I can't speak for anybody else in the room, but I can tell you what we do.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, and how do you handle the cell phone situation? How do you manage it for the kids?
The kids, they do not have their cell phones when it's based on teacher instruction. Teachers can either have their cell phones or not. 90% of the day they do not have their cell phones. They do not have them. Some teachers use them as a reward system. Get done with your assignment early, and some kids need that. They have something that they can go to and they can do. Listening to music to calm them down, using their cell phones. I know of several students that use them to contact therapists during the day or contact a help person when they're having a bad day.
Representative Arlant.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For you, how do you navigate when a student comes from a family that doesn't have the financial capacity to have a smartphone? I mean, these are, about $1,000 these days,
Yes.
so we have lots of families that can't make that purchase.
Yeah. Most of our students have the cell phone. If there is a situation like when we're using the scavenger hunt, sometimes they will do that in pairs, so they will have a partner that they will be working with. And of course, this is all monitored very closely. This is not just willy-nilly. We let them go everywhere. And sometimes they're using the teacher's phone. If they do need to do something, the teacher will allow them to do that, or we will let them do, we will use that. But we don't run into a lot of that problem, just because I think a lot of it is done in groups or in small settings. So,
Does that answer your question? One more question, maybe? Representative DeGroote.
In your bill, it states that we can make exceptions for educational accommodations, and in my world and Mr. Munson's world, we can call him doctor today because we're passing out all kinds of labels. Anyway, that means accommodations for 504s, special ed, IEPs, those kinds of things. Is there something in this bill that allows a school district to have cell phones in the classroom for special activities, educational activities?
Madam Chair. Senator Chris Carr, District 11. Well, it's a great question. And when this was drafted, this was meant to allow for those educational purposes. I guess I don't read into it what has been shared in that regarding that concern. If there's better language, we can look at that. But it is meant to allow phones to be used in those educational settings or purposes when it's supervised by an instructor. I thought there was, a good question about who all has a cell phone. I mean, we haven't tackled that yet in my house. We're still going to work on learning to ride a bike. But at some point, we got to figure out what age are our girls going to have cell phones. And, the other thing is this allows, some of those exceptions, health and safety, well-being. The intent was to allow for those educational uses, Representative.
Answer your question?
Just to follow up, maybe a comment. I think in the educational world, this will be unclear, so if you can do some clarification on that, would really be appreciated.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I think we'll close our question portion of the testimony, and we'll move on to committee discussion. Representative Uribach, would you like to discuss something?
I do appreciate the senator and representative for bringing this bill. I think it's a very important topic. Fully agree that it is a major concern. Health, mental health issues, all kinds of things. I do have some concerns as far as that language of what exactly an academic exemption is. As a science teacher, cell phones were perfect for taking pictures of what you were seeing in your microscope. And to get that camera would be hundreds of thousands of dollars, hundreds of dollars. And so, and definitely being able to do Kahoot, do the QR codes, do these different things that are so engaging for students, and they're not a worksheet, and they get kids up and moving. And there are some aspects where that can't be done on a computer. Maybe it could be done on an iPad. So I'm nervous about the cost of shifting this technology. But hopefully that could be amended. I do wish that it could be more for local control of, like, could this be a K-8 ban? Could we allow for the DOE to promulgate rules, which I was going to continue to ask questions about, to ask, maybe it's a thing where it's a kind of an opt-out thing where school districts, if they have a good reason, like I heard in the Senate testimony that there was a school district that allows seniors to have cell phones because they're about to go into the real world, whether that's college or a job or whatever, and not have any restraints or ways to learn and make mistakes and be able to, grow and use that skill of being able to regulate their cell phone usage. And so, I do wish I could see some more of those types of things to actually bring it back to local control. And also, I am concerned about enforcement. I just don't know if there's actually, can the DOE come in, if administrators or teachers, if they're concerned that they're not enforcing the policies that they do have now, why do we think that they're going to continue to
Thank you.
use
Other
this?
comments? Any other comments? Yes, Representative Rice.
Yeah, I appreciate the good senator and representative that brought this bill. I think it's a good topic to have. I kind of agree with a lot of the things that they talked about, but I as looking at my local control and the work that our First Lady of South Dakota did, going around and educating our schools, and I think that's worked. And so I hesitate to get this through just because it's a mandate, and I think I'd like to have this with our local control, and I think it's working. And I think we passed a resolution last year for cell phone, to have the local control, and I think I like to see that keep working and see what happens. Maybe in the future this is what we need, but I think right now I am not for a mandate. I'm sorry.
Would we have any kind of, yes, Representative Arland?
I'll make a motion for purposes of timing. I'll make a do pass motion.
Okay, Representative Arland has made a do pass motion. Is there a second? Representative Halverson, any comments? Representative Arland?
Yeah, thank you for your comments. I sat on that summer study a couple years ago and had a chance to look at the data, and I, have struggled and gone back and forth on what's the best approach for this. And I think what I keep coming back to is, if the policies at the school districts were all working, our teachers wouldn't be here supporting this bill today. SDEA is a supporter of this bill. As a mom with young kids, I appreciate the answer from our superintendent on how they navigate. Our teachers know which kids can't afford to have a cell phone, and I think handle that very sensitive. So to the teachers in the room, thank you. I know you all navigate that on a daily basis. I recently bought a DVD and a VCR player from a thrift shop because I'm so sick of my kids having access to things that I don't want them to have access to. So if anybody has any old DVDs and VHS they're trying to get rid of, I'm your gal. But
this is not Pawn Stars. You want to just... we veered away.
But, so even with that answer, I appreciate the way you're handling that sensitively, but that means that my kid at that time might be looking at somebody's phone and there's something on that phone. I want to navigate that as a mom. I want them to have access. I'm a small business owner, and I'm seeing what challenges in that younger generation are having for the addiction to their phone. And so that's what made me a yes vote today.
Thank you. Okay, so there is a motion on the floor by Representative Arlen.
Madam Chair.
Do pass. There is a second by Representative Halverson. Representative Jordan?
I'll make a substitute motion to send to the 41st day.
Okay, there's a substitute motion on the floor to move this to the 41st day by Representative Jordan, a second by Representative Rice. Comments on your motion?
Yeah. One thing we learned during COVID nationally, not as much in South Dakota, there was a lot of indoctrination going on and still is across the country. And the main thing that exposed that was recording the teachers spewing Marxist propaganda or gender ideology. So magically, a couple years later, we want to ban the devices that expose the indoctrination that's going on. You cannot tell me that is not connected. Secondly, in South Dakota, we don't have as much indoctrination going on, but I know of, because some are my siblings, where the teachers and the principals tell the parents, your kids are ours when we have them. And my,
Oh, sorry.
That didn't go well with my parents. They didn't handle that because they're their kids, not the school's kids. So a lot of this is just control, and I think parents can raise their kids the best. So that is why I'm a no.
Representative Stevens?
Thank you. Well, I'm going to support the 41st day for completely different reasons. In all due regards, you know, I was very impressed with the testimony of Mr. Shuck, who testified in that regard that local control does work. And the policies that the school boards have followed, I mean, when you get 94, 95% of the people doing what we ask them to do, I think is very important. Certainly protecting our kids is very important, but you know, there's another aspect of it too. And I do think our schools protect our kids. They've taken all kinds of actions, devices to make sure they're safe in the schools. But you know, there's another part of that they're to learn, and where they're teaching the kids to be responsible. And I was really impressed with how Kadoka handled their situation and used it as a learning experience. They used them properly when they're not supposed to be using them. And I think the very good example that someone said, well, I don't see any of the pages used in it. Well, what does that tell you? They can follow directions. They can follow directions. And it almost seems like the underlying premise to this bill is that our school boards and our teachers are unable or incapable of handling this issue. And I don't believe that. I think they certainly can do it, and they have been doing it in the past. You know, when we look at it in a typical week, there's 168 hours, only about 35 of them are in the school. So those kids have access to, you know, the cell phones all they want. And I do believe that each school district is different. They have different needs. They have different flexibility. I do think there are benefits for them having the cell phones at times. And I just have a lot more confidence, I guess, in that. I don't think we can attribute reading proficiency solely to the cell phones. And, you know, the other thing that comes into play, too, is, you know, there's a part there that the parents have to start taking responsibility, and I just don't see that happening. And so for those reasons, and really a lot of others, because of time, I won't bring those up, but I don't think this is a statewide responsibility. I don't think PEER needs to be the school board for everybody. And for those reasons, I would vote to go the 41st day.
Thank you. We will be acting on the substitute motion then, first of all, and I will ask our Mr. Secretary to call the roll. We're voting on sending this to the 41st day. It's been made into a motion and a second. Go ahead, Mr. Secretary.
Representative Garcia.
Aye.
DeGroot.
No.
Halverson.
No.
Rice.
Aye.
Schwans.
Aye.
Baxter.
Aye.
Heerman.
Nay.
Ismay.
No.
Arland.
No.
Jordan.
Aye.
Uribalk.
Aye.
Knowles.
Aye.
Manhart.
No.
Stevens. Aye. Greenfield.
No.
Madam Chair, there are 8 yeas, 7 nays.
Okay, with that, then Senate Bill 198 has failed. We thank you all for coming and for the robust discussion. Much appreciated.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I'd like to move Senate Bill 198 off the table.
It's not on the table.
It's not on.
It's 792, so she wants to recall it back from the 41st day to amend it.
Okay. Okay.
That's my motion. Thank you.
Okay. So now what do we do?
Vote.
Okay, so it's been stated that there's a motion to recall this back, and we need to vote on whether we want to do the recall or not. Motion by Knowles, second by Representative DeGroot. Or Jordan. Excuse me, Representative Jordan. Comments, Representative Knowles.
Yeah, I have an amendment I'd like to bring. If we would like to pull it off and take action, I'll propose the amendment.
Go ahead.
So we got to vote to pull it back first.
Oh, we got to vote to pull it back. Okay. All right.
It's published.
Yeah, it is Amendment 198B.
And since she's just pulling it back, we'll hear if it's successful, they'd have to hear it on Wednesday.
Okay.
So it wouldn't get a full hearing today.
Yeah, I got you. Okay. Okay, so all we're doing is looking at the amendment. We're not acting on the amendment at this particular time. So we're not commenting.
As the bill's prime sponsor, can I speak?
Good Lord.
Um,
How many pages is this?
Go ahead.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, this is Taylor Rayfelt, representative out of District 14. This is called a Hog House Amendment, which would completely be a different, complete subject from what the bill that was originally brought before you today. Additionally, this same exact bill failed in the Senate, and this is an attempt to circumvent the process of committee processes through the 4 steps through the legislature.
Thank you. Okay. So with that, we'll have, we had the motion to recall and the second to recall. And so with that, we will vote on the issue, Mr. Secretary.
Representative Garcia.
Pass.
DeGroot.
No.
Halverson.
No.
Rice.
Aye.
Schwans.
Aye.
Baxter.
Pass.
Heerman.
No.
Ismay.
Aye.
Arland.
No.
Jordan.
Aye.
Uri Balk.
No.
Knowles.
Aye.
Manhart.
Aye.
Garcia.
How many passes can I take?
That's it.
No.
Baxter.
Aye.
Stevens.
No.
Greenfield.
No.
Madam Chair, there are 7 yeas, 8 nays.
Okay, so with that, motion to recall has failed. So there is a motion to adjourn by Representative Stevens, a second by Representative Manhart. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. We are adjourned.
From children's programs to in-depth documentaries, SDPB sparks curiosity and lifelong learning in every South Dakotan. SDPB, good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB brings South Dakotans together, telling the stories that unite small towns, big ideas, and the people who make our state shine. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. SDPB shares the voices and experiences of South Dakotans, preserving our stories, our culture, and our sense of place. SDPB, good, useful, and full of wonder.
Call House Judiciary into order. Mr. Secretary, will you please call roll?
Representative
Thank you.
Representative Mortensen.
Here.
Reich, excused. Wahlberg.
Here.
Roby, excused. Fitzgerald.
Here.
Reimer.
Here.
Whitman.
Here.
Massey.
Here.
Call.
Here.
Poirier.
Here.
Hunt.
Here.
Hughes, excused. Stevens.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. At this time, we'll take a motion by Representative Kip Whitman and Mortensen to approve the minutes. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. We'll have our pages come up and introduce ourselves.
Hi, I'm Connor Newsom, and I'm from Lake Preston.
My name's Isla Rohde. I'm from Sturgis.
Thank you very much for helping us out. The first bill that we have this morning, and we're going to take all these bills, we're going to give about 10 to 12 minutes for each one of them on each side, because we got to get through these. Senate Bill 41, an act to revise a provision related to criminal invasion of privacy, prohibit the creation and distribution of digitally fabricated material of an identifiable individual, and to provide penalties therefore. We'll take proponent testimony. Good morning, Mr. Attorney General.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, committee members, Marty Jackley, South Dakota Attorney General. Senate Bill 41 is designed to address AI of unconsenting adults. It really arose out of a case in Aberdeen. It's a pending case, so I can't say much about it. It's an 85-count indictment. It was a Department of Motor Vehicles employee that was taking allegedly information from the driver's license process and doing allegedly inappropriate things with that. You may recall in previous sessions, I as Attorney General brought a bill to address AI when it dealt with children. What we're starting to find now is AI is being inappropriately used now on adults, somebody that's 18 or older. It comes in the deep fakes where basically somebody takes an image or a video that's posted on social media and they plug it into a pornographic setting unbeknownst to the person and not with their consent. With respect to 2221-4, that's a statute in place. There's a lot of language changes in that, and that was through LRC process to make those, the first two parts of that statute that already exist better clarifying as to what is required. The main gist of the legal requirements on this statute are an individual without the consent or knowledge of the individual depicted or recorded and with the intent to self-gratify, and that it also has to cause harm to the individual. So that subsection 1 under that statute would be really what I would call the manufacturing side of it, already an existing statute. Section 2 would be the distribution side of it, again, already an existing statute. And then the subset 3 is the major change dealing with AI. And as you can see, it makes unlawful, and it puts the requirements on knowingly and intentionally creates, discloses, disseminates, distributes, or sells by any means digitally fabricated material depicting the identifiable individual, and then it puts 2 subcategories of that individual, and it's when it's in a state of nudity such that an ordinary person viewing the material would conclude that the depiction is of the identifying individual in the state of nudity, or the second subpart, engaging in sexual contact, sexual intercourse, deviant sexual activity, etc. With respect to penalties, the penalties would remain the same under subsections 1 and 2, and that is normally a class 1 misdemeanor unless the victim is under the age of 18 and the perpetrator is over the age of 21, and then it becomes the lowest level or class 6 felony. With respect to the AI side and subsection 3, that would make it a violation as a class 5 felony. I also want to turn your attention to section 2. Definitions are always important, but it puts in the added protections. It defines what digitally fabricated material means, and also importantly in our subsection 2, it includes that an identifiable individual that is mentioned on the AI side. Mr. Chairman, I'll make myself available for questions at the appropriate time.
Thank you. Do you have any other proponents for Senate Bill 41? Any other proponents? Mr. Erickson.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Eric Erickson with the States Attorneys Association. We think the Attorney General gave a very good overview. We appreciate him bringing the bill and would ask for your favorable consideration.
Thank you. Do we have any other proponents? Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Savannah Cruz here on behalf of the Police Chiefs Association. We would just echo the sentiment brought forth by Mr. Erickson, and would just rise in support as well, offering me too. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other proponents? Seeing none, do we have any opponents? Good morning.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Tara Larson. I'm an attorney here in Pierre and registered lobbyist for the South Dakota Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers. And we stand in opposition of this bill, not because we don't see, I guess necessarily a need for some sort of prohibition of this, but a class 6 felony of this is a bridge too far, especially when the rest of the bill, if you have the gumption to go and actually videotape somebody in a state of nudity, that's a class 1 misdemeanor. But here you're creating a felon in 10 seconds. And I'm gonna get into that a little bit. We have all seen the articles about Grok and Grok making inappropriate images if requested. Grok is X, right? It's easily attainable. Everybody has it, and it's easy. And I'm actually going to tell you an example of this. After my first testimony on this bill in the Senate Judiciary, a friend of mine who I would venture to say every single one of you guys knows, but I'm not going to actually say who it is, decided to test out the Grok theory on me. And that was interesting. It was a situation where
I was like this on a bar, right? And they said, take off her clothes. Less than 10 seconds, less than 10 seconds, I don't have any clothes on, right? I'm in a state of nudity, absolutely, right? But you can't see that, right? It doesn't actually show, Grok will not show actual, breasts, all that fun stuff, but it'll show a lot. And it was 10 seconds. And we all had a really good laugh, right? Because we went, oh gosh, it happened so quick, right? And then they joked around and did it to other people sitting at the bar table, right? Here, 10 seconds. 10 seconds to a felony. People who are just joking around, right? Now, I understand that, we're going to talk about, oh gosh, you got the intent behind all of this, and, it has to be in the intent to self-gratify. Here's the thing. If I'm a prosecutor, I'm going to argue that's all with the intent, right? You're going to see state of nudity on somebody's phone, and there you go. Now you're prosecuted with a felony, and yep, they have to prove with intent, but that's not that hard, right? When you have somebody in a certain state of nudity. Additionally, we talk about, is a bikini a state of nudity? We're assured, the Attorney General in the last committee assured us, oh yeah, that's not the intent. Well, it's not the intent until you have a prosecutor that actually says, well, a bikini is a state of nudity, because wait, a state of nudity is not defined as well. Additionally, I think it's important to point out that not only are you 10 seconds to a felony here, but you're also on the sex offender registry, right? You're over the age of 18. You're an 18-year-old kid who's bored in their hotel room, or in their dorm room, and says, take off Taylor Swift's clothes. Well, now you're a felon and you're on the sex offender registry, and you have to register as a sex offender, and you have to do all of the things. You lose your right to vote. You lose your gun rights. You lose all of the things because you're bored and can't go to Pornhub. Now, I also don't want to nitpick here, but the term individual is not defined. And on the bright side, our Attorney General did tell the Senate committee in their discussion at 27 minutes and 25 seconds that the term individual is synonymous with person, which actually is defined. But if you look at the definition of person, it talks about a natural person, unborn child, an association, a limited liability company, a corporation, a firm, an organization, a partnership, or a society. So a person or an individual is theoretically Disney, right? So somebody could say, hey, take Elsa's clothes off, and it's animated, right? But take Elsa's clothes off, and now all of a sudden they're a felon. Look at Winnie the Pooh, and I'm using an adium absurdum here, but Winnie the Pooh is always in a state of nudity, right? I understand that there's prosecutorial discretion here, but I harp on this committee of saying there's prosecutorial discretion until there's not. And we have had a bill this year that was brought up that specifically talked about an issue where we tried to fix it in this committee. We said there was going to be unintended consequences, and then it passed with flying colors, and sure enough, there was unintended consequences. This bill is not ready for prime time. I like the idea of, something that has a little more thought put into it, that doesn't make somebody a felon in 10 seconds, as being a misdemeanor like the rest of the bill. Again, you have the gumption to go and actually videotape somebody, and that's a misdemeanor, yet, you tell Grok to undress somebody, that's a felony. That doesn't make any sense. I like the idea. This bill is not ready for prime time, however, and I would urge you to oppose this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other opponents to Senate Bill 41? Any other opponents? Seeing none, Mr. AG, would you like to do a rebuttal?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee members, Marty Jackley, South Dakota Attorney General. With respect to the 10-second argument, most homicides I and state's attorneys prosecute occur and are formulated in less than 10 seconds. You can hurt a lot of people a lot of different ways. This is a good bill that has protections put in place. With respect to the various scenarios that were brought up, the very beginning takes care of all of those. It requires without the consent or knowledge of the individual depicted, and it says individual. It says with the intent to self-gratify, alarm, annoy, embarrass, or harass. And number 3, harm to that individual. It's very specific in defining identifiable, and it says under Section 2, identifiable, recognized as a specific individual by the individual's face, likeness, or other distinguishing characteristics. It's a serious matter when somebody decides to go on the internet, on social media, and take a picture of an 18-year-old little girl and put it in a pornographic setting, unbeknownst to her, without her consent. And I feel it needs to be addressed. We now unfortunately have a case in South Dakota where at least allegedly that has happened. And I would urge your support for this good bill. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll close testimony, open up for a couple of minutes of questions. Do you have any questions by anybody? Representative Whitman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question for the AG. Thank you. I understand that serious crimes can occur very quickly, like you mentioned, but my question is not about the duration of conduct. It's about the proportionality within the specific chapter. And so I guess I would just echo the opposition we heard. Why is a first-time hidden recording a misdemeanor generally, but a digitally fabricated image would automatically be a Class 5 felony?
Mr. Chairman? Number 1, previous legislators have chosen under subsections 1 and 2 the level of felonies. When we looked at this, part of the conversation was, should we increase that, given what we've seen, where we came down at on subsection 3 with AI. When you're doing this, you have a very significant intent. I mean, when you're taking and taking the steps to go on social media or to go as your job in the Department of Motor Vehicles and take a picture of a young girl, and then you do this, and then you further disseminate it, you destroy somebody's life, and some of that can happen on subsections 1 and 2. But given the nature, the intent, the motive behind the AI and the use of technology, we just felt this is a significant crime. It very much so victimizes somebody, not that subsections 1 and 2 don't. And perhaps, given that testimony in the opposition, maybe subsections 1 and 2 should be a more serious felony. But today and in this bill, I think it makes sense. I think it's a measured response. The protections are put in place, as I've testified to, and that's why we felt it rises to the level of a Class 5 felony.
Yes, Representative Mortensen.
I have a question for Mr. Erickson. Is he still here? All right, Mr. AG, you got to be up. I was going to ask him, because some of these are for examples that I felt like the county prosecutors would probably encounter more than the Attorney General, although you'll take some when they rise up to that level. So I think I'm good with this, and I agree with your rebuttal in a general way. I'm hung up on sub A on page 2. Is this, because we're saying a state of nudity, that means half nudity, right? Somebody topless in addition to full nude?
Mr. Chairman? Yes.
So here's my for example. If the president puts out a tweet and he's grok imaged J.B. Pritzker with his shirt off to embarrass him, is he a Class 5 felon under this bill?
Mr. Chairman? No.
Okay. Well, I'm just going to run through the elements here. That would be without that person's consent or knowledge, they are depicted with the intent to embarrass, and now they have knowingly and intentionally created a digitally fabricated material depicting that person in a state of nudity. So help me out with that. We just said that half nude is a state of nudity, and so now it's shirtless, and the point of this is to embarrass this guy. So help me out with the no. I don't quite understand.
Mr. Chairman? I think the reason it doesn't fit the statute and why I wouldn't prosecute it and other state's attorneys wouldn't prosecute it, it's without the shirt. Now, if he was a female, I'd give you a different answer. If he didn't have pants on or underwear, I'd give you a different answer.
Further questions by committee members? Seeing none, we'll close questions and open up to committee discussion and/or action.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Representative.
I would motion to pass.
Excuse me, we have a motion by Representative Fitzgerald, second by Representative Wahlberg on a due pass on Senate Bill 41. Comments, Representative Fitzgerald?
Just very briefly, I think it's a very good bill. Actions like this can damage someone's personal life or their career. It causes emotional trauma. It can spread quickly online. And so that I think that we need to establish this in statute, and I would urge all of you to vote yes. Thank you.
Further comments? See,
I got just one quick comment.
yes.
You know, I'm going to vote no on this. I think we need, this state of nudity thing has got me tripped up, as I think the question line, you know, I shouldn't say exposed, but I guess we're on the topic. But I think it would need to be, for me, something about exposing genitals or something like what was just asked here. We're in this new age with this new technology, and you see stuff on X or wherever, and most of this is content creator, you know, I mean, the people are doing this with the intent to amuse their friends and whatever, and Class 5 felonies are big deals, and that's the part that I would need tightened up. And maybe there's room to do that if this comes to the floor or not, but that's my concern.
Well, doesn't the first sentence where it says that you're doing this with the intent to self-gratify, alarm, annoy, embarrass, harass, invade the privacy, threaten or cause emotional, financial, physical, psychological, or reputational harm to that individual, doesn't that take care of that issue?
Mr. Chair, we're getting maybe a little bit too into the way I deal with my friends, but the part of it that's funny is that we're embarrassing one of the guys in this group. I mean, that's the part that makes me nervous, that embarrass thing mixed with a little bit broader definition. That's where I tripped.
Okay, sure. Any further questions?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Representative Roby.
You said questions?
Well, comments.
We're on a motion, right? Yeah. I'm going to support the motion. I think that the ordinary person viewing the material would conclude. I think that perhaps it could be tightened up a little bit if it does get to the floor, but I'm comfortable with that language enough to support this due pass motion.
Okay, so then what we have in front of you is a due pass motion for Senate Bill 41, an act to revise a provision related to criminal invasion of privacy, prohibit the creation and distribution of digitally fabricated material of an identifiable individual, and provide penalties thereof. The motion is made by Representative Fitzgerald, second by Representative Wahlberg. All those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed, nay. Mr. Secretary, please call the roll.
Representative Martinson.
No.
Reich, excused. Wahlberg.
Aye.
Roby.
Aye.
Fitzgerald.
Aye.
Reimer.
Aye.
Whitman.
No.
Massey.
Aye.
Cole.
Aye.
Poirier.
Aye.
Hunt.
No.
Hughes, excused. Stevens.
Aye.
8 yea, 3 nay, 2 excused.
Senate Bill 41 hereby passed by 8-3 vote. The next bill we have in front of you is Senate Bill 42, an act to enhance the penalties for ingestion, possession with intent to deliver, and delivery of a controlled substance in a state correctional facility. We'll take proponent testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee members. Marty Jackley, South Dakota Attorney General. Senate Bill 42 is the AG's partial solution to the drugs coming into our penitentiary. Last year alone, we investigated 8 overdose deaths. Several of those are under indictment. We generally have about 120 criminal cases out of the penitentiary. The vast majority of those have ties to illegal substances coming into the penitentiary. The focus is really twofold on this bill. Under the beginning part, you'll see where it talks about any employee or other person. So it's not inmates. That's addressed by other statutes with doubling, could be addressed with a habitual offender and other things. So this focuses on getting the drugs into the prison, and it's specific to delivering them to an inmate in a state correctional facility. And what it does is changes the class of felony. Right now it's a class 4. It would change it from a class 4, which is a 10-year felony, to a class 3, which would be a 15-year felony. The second side of that addresses really the ingestion side. Last session in Senate Bill 83, ingestion was moved from a felony to a misdemeanor. Because of separation of powers, when there's an inmate serving time, they're under the Department of Corrections jurisdiction, the executive branch. That means that the UJS side on the judicial branch does not have jurisdiction over a misdemeanor. So the effect of Senate Bill 83 was to make it lawful for an inmate to ingest a controlled substance, whether it's K2 or meth. There's been 2 court decisions on that, and it's pretty established that because of separation of powers, that's just simply where it's at. So the suggested change comes on the very end, subsections 4 and 5, and it simply makes a violation by an inmate under confinement in a state correctional facility a Class 5 felony. It's a serious matter when you have 8 overdose deaths and you've got 120 pending files. That's why the Attorney General is urging that it is increased to that level. The other subsection 5 deals with parole, and it includes a violation by a person while under state parole is also a Class 5 felony. I would tell you from a financial matter, we looked at the numbers last year. There were 99 parole revocations. 92 of those were dealt with administrative, which they should be. Typically, we will give Department of Corrections the opportunity, if they feel they can address it administratively, to do that. Unfortunately, 7 of those cases had to arise to a prosecution. And so that's why that provision is in there. Mr. Chairman, I'll make myself available at the appropriate time for questions.
Thank you. Do you have any other proponents for Senate Bill 42? Morning.
Morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Secretary Nick Lamb, Secretary of the Department of Corrections. The DOC strongly supports the Attorney General's efforts to strengthen our laws through SB 42, which will deter the use and delivery of drugs in our state correctional facilities. This bill also helps to deter and protect both staff and inmates. The DOC also appreciates the Attorney General's help in investigating and prosecuting cases related to drugs in our prisons. Please vote yes for SB 42. I will make myself available for questions if needed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other proponents for Senate Bill 42? I think this is the guy you were, oh, where's Mortensen? Representative Mortensen go? We can't seem to keep you two in the same room at the same time.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Clearly, that was not me he was referencing in any of that. Good morning. Eric Erickson with the State's Attorneys Association. We appreciate the Attorney General's leadership on this bill as well. We ask for your favorable consideration in addressing this important and tragic topic. Thank you.
Thank you. We have any other proponents for Senate Bill 42? Morning.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Savannah Cruz on behalf of the Police Chiefs Association, and we offer a Me Too in support of Senate Bill 42 as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other proponents for Senate Bill 42? Seeing none, do we have any opponents for Senate Bill 42?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Tara Larson. I'm an attorney here in Pierre and registered lobbyist for the South Dakota Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers. Our opposition is soft in a sense that we understand that there were some unintended consequences related to SB 83 from last year with regard to making ingestion a misdemeanor and how that works in the probation versus parole aspect. I think to give a little clarity on this, there was a case that's titled State versus Orr that states that you cannot be on both probation and parole at the same time. I would disagree with the Attorney General that you cannot prosecute a misdemeanor when somebody is in DOC custody. That is inaccurate. DOC, misdemeanors are prosecuted in DOC all the time. The problem is you cannot place them on probation, right? Because theoretically, when you're in DOC custody, that's parole, DOC, et cetera, there's your separation of powers argument. So I think an easy amendment to that could be under the language that this legislature passed last year, making ingestion a misdemeanor. The way that you could fix that is to add a simple, except if you're under the supervisions of DOC or parole, then you can't do mandatory supervised probation, right? Because under our current law, with the ingestion as a misdemeanor, there's mandatory probation. That's the kicker there. And so an amendment could easily be made without making something a felony, which again, this legislature literally just passed last year saying we don't want to do that, right? We want to require treatment and all of that. It's a much easier solution than what is being proposed here. And we would absolutely stand down if an amendment like that was made, but otherwise, this is essentially flying in the face of what this legislature just passed last year, regardless of whether somebody happens to be in DOC custody or parole custody. You know, we want to treat these people who are addicts. We don't want to add on their time. And just on a final note, as the Attorney General stated, if they're getting in trouble in prison anyway, they're definitely going to be having time added onto their sentence, regardless of whether they're prosecuted or not. So I'll stand by for questions.
Thank you. Do you have any other opponents to Senate Bill 42? Seeing none, then we'd open up to rebuttal testimony.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, committee members, Marty Jackley, South Dakota Attorney General. There are two cases, Orr and Diaz, that limits the ability to address a misdemeanor in DOC control. So, as was suggested, if you were to go that route, we'd be back to no consequences. You can't even put them on probation. There's no immediate consequence. And so I think when you have 8 overdose deaths, 8 people that clearly ingested illegal controlled substances. You have, right now, I think, pending 117 criminal cases in the penitentiary. It's a dangerous situation. It's not just dangerous for the inmate. It frankly creates dangers for correction officers, nurses' aides, everybody working in the penitentiary. So because of the separation of powers, I feel we need to respect our Constitution. We need to respect the separate branches of government, and there has to be some consequence if an inmate ingests a dangerous substance, and would request that you resist any such amendment that would water down the ability for an immediate response under these serious circumstances.
Thank you. We'll close testimony, open it up to a few committee questions. Representative Whitman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have an amendment. It has been published. It's 42E.
Could we get comment from anybody else on how they feel about this, if they've seen it?
Have you seen that, Mr. Attorney General? Have you seen the proposed amendment?
1 minute ago.
1 minute ago? Okay.
It's the same as D.
It's the same as D?
Yeah. It just cleaned up the title.
Could I speak to the amendment?
Sure.
Thank you. I believe that what this amendment does is it addresses the State versus Orr decision, clarifying that mandatory probation does not apply to individuals already under DOC supervision, which our Supreme Court said was not permissible. And then it also removes the Class 5 felony provisions for ingestion by inmates and individuals on parole. And part of that is because I believe that instead of creating an automatic higher level felony in those circumstances, the offense should remain subject to our existing ingestion penalty structure that we voted on in this body last year. Thank you.
Mr. Attorney General, have you had an opportunity to look at it? Would like to comment on it?
Mr. Chairman, committee members, Marty Jackley, South Dakota Attorney General, even though we haven't deeply studied it, my team believes it does not fix the Orr and Diaz circumstances. And I would go back to simply stating, you have 8 overdose deaths. You have a serious problem. A much more serious problem than to say we are going to have a no consequence, lack of immediate response when you have drugs in the penitentiary. It's serious, creates public safety issues, and I'm asking you to please resist this amendment because it doesn't legally fix the concern and the problem where we're at because of separation of powers of our Constitution.
The community members had an opportunity to look at it. Okay, so we have a motion. I was going to get to that part. We have a motion. Do we have a second? Second. Okay, we have a motion and a second by Representative Poirier. All in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay? No. Motion fails. We're back to committee discussion and or action.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Make a motion to pass.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Representative Wahlberg, a second by Representative Fitzgerald. For any comments?
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you. While I appreciate Representative Whitman's effort to try to keep this in line with Senate Bill 83 that we passed last year, I just want to bring you back to what Senate Bill 83 was last year. As many of you remember, I was very outspoken about it. Spoke for 10 minutes. And my heart of the conversation was, it's not that I don't think that we need to give these people treatment and everything else. It's we don't have the centers and we don't have the people in place to provide this treatment today for tomorrow. And so what have we done today? We've created a lot of people, instead of being charged with that felony, which is great, to the misdemeanors, in order for them to get the treatment. But I encourage you to call your local circuits to see if this is actually taking place, because I did over the weekend. So we have felony offenders that are required to do this treatment, and they get into the centers. Specifically, we talk about the HOPE program and HOPE probation. That's what this was geared for. But we don't have the expanded scope. Nothing's been put in place for these other programs for these offenders to get into to help them. I think we did a disservice last year. Number one, we did a good service trying to get this in the right path, but I think we did a disservice because we don't have the programs and the people in place to help them today for tomorrow. So I hope you work with us and the Attorney General and try to pass this, because what's happening in the prisons is horrible. And when they get out of prison, we want to have the ability for them to succeed. And having a misdemeanor is not to succeed. Having that felony probation on there so they know that something's going to happen and they can get into the treatment programs and go forward versus what the misdemeanor is already requiring. Parole officers have more discretion over them, and he even said it himself in his testimony that there was 99 revocations, 92 of those were dealt with administratively, and that meant 7 of those had to have some other type of course of action. So that tells me that they are doing something the right way. 7 of those people either A, didn't listen, committed another crime, or maybe we just had to bring them back in for some more accountability. So I appreciate your support, and let's do the right thing. Thanks.
Any further comments? Representative Fitzgerald?
Just briefly, thank you, Mr. Chair. I think we do need to have some accountability for the actions. I am in prison. I don't think that should be a place where we continue to have illegal behavior. And so I would just urge everyone to please support this and vote yes. Thank you.
Any further comments? Yes, Representative Whitman.
I would just say that it is an absolute tragedy that we've had 8 overdose deaths, and I would commend our new secretary for the DOC. I've had a great time working with him over the last few months, but I really fail to see how increasing the felony level for ingestion or delivery will prevent any deaths from happening in the future. And if the underlying problem that we continually talk about in this body is drugs entering our facilities or individuals struggling with untreated substance use disorder while in custody, I question how sentencing enhancement is the tool that's actually going to address the problem. This bill, as I'm reading it, increases penalties after the fact. It doesn't change any of our screening procedures, treatment access, overdose response protocols, or the medical reality of substance use disorder that we're seeing in our facilities. And I think that our responsibility as a body is not just to respond, but to respond in a way that meaningfully improves safety and outcomes. And I'm not persuaded that escalating this felony for individuals that are already in custody will accomplish that, which is why I will be voting no. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments? Seeing none, what we have in front of us is Senate Bill 42, an act to enhance the penalties for ingestion, possession with intent to deliver and delivery of a controlled substance in a state correctional facility. We have a due pass motion by Representative Wahlberg, second by Representative Fitzgerald. All those in favor of the due pass motion will vote aye. Those opposed, nay. Mr. Secretary, please call the roll.
Representative Mortensen.
Aye.
Reich, excused. Wahlberg.
Aye.
Roby.
Aye.
Fitzgerald.
Aye.
Ryan.
Aye.
Whitman.
No.
Massey.
Aye.
Call.
Aye.
Poirier.
Aye.
Hunt.
Aye.
Hughes, excused. Stevens.
Aye.
10 yea, 1 nay, 2 excused.
Senate Bill 42 is hereby passed. The next act we have in front of us, the bill is Senate Bill 43, an act to address search and seizure provisions applicable to digital currency. Mr. Attorney General.
Good morning again, Mr. Chairman, committee members. Marty Jackley, South Dakota Attorney General. Senate Bill 43 seeks to include digital currency in our search and seizure laws. From the outset, to some degree, this bill will provide legitimacy to cryptocurrency. I think the time has come for that, providing definitions of what that is. I feel it needs to be included in the search and seizure laws because of bad actors, not because of the good actors. If you look at digital currency right now, there's about $9.3 billion worth of crypto digital currency scams in the United States. It is, much like cash, used in criminal acts. Nationally, $2.4 billion in relation to drug activity. In the human trafficking side, 15 of the 27 major human trafficking rings deal in virtual currency. In fact, in South Dakota alone, when it comes to scams, in 2024, South Dakota consumers lost $13.8 million in crypto losses. So it's a significant problem. When you look at our existing laws on search and seizure, they're very sound. The challenge is, because it defines or other tangible objects, arguably crypto is intangible, and I think it's an easy solution, and that is to simply add in the words digital currency, so that if you have a bad actor, you have a law enforcement effort, you have a search and seizure matter, that you're able to include that in the search-related documents. And then significantly, Section 2 defines digital currency, and that is, for purposes of this chapter, digital currency means a digital representation of value recorded on a cryptographically secured distributed ledger or other medium of exchange, including blockchain or similar technology. Very specific definition. I think it fits the national trend on that definition. Mr. Chairman, I'll make myself available for questions at the appropriate time.
Thank you. Do we have any other proponent testimony?
Good morning, Chairman, committee members. Stacy Ackerman, Executive Director for the South Dakota Sheriff's Association. I think it was 2024 I was asked to participate and be a member of a statewide cryptocurrency task force. And I'm a former law enforcement officer, but I'm not a current law enforcement officer, and I quickly learned I was way over my head. But luckily there were a lot of detectives and investigators from police departments and sheriff's offices across the state, and I can tell you this is a big problem for them to navigate, and this bill is a step in the right direction, and we ask for your support.
Thank you. Do we have any other proponent testimony for Senate Bill 43? Mr. Erickson.
Good morning again. Eric Erickson, the State's Attorneys Association. I think you could put us as a me too on this one. We again appreciate the Attorney General's leadership and ask for your favorable consideration.
Thank you. Any other proponents for Senate Bill 43? Ms. Cruz.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Savannah Cruz on behalf of the police chiefs. Ms. Ackerman summed up our thoughts beautifully. We would just ask for, we rise in support of Senate Bill 43 and just urge your yes vote on this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other proponents? Seeing none, do we have any opponents to Senate Bill 43? Seeing none, we'll close testimony and open it up to committee questions. No questions, we'll open up to committee discussion and or action.
Mr. Chair.
Yes,
I
Representative
move
Mortensen.
do pass.
We have a motion by Representative Mortensen, a second by Representative Call. Do pass. Any comments, Representative Mortensen?
Thoughtful, proactive, clean. It's a good bill.
Did you memorize that?
Made notes over here.
Any further comments? So what we have in front of us is Senate Bill 43, an act to address search and seizure provisions applicable to digital currency. We have a motion by Representative Mortensen, second by Representative Cole, and a do pass. All those in favor vote aye. Those opposed, nay. Mr. Secretary, please call the roll.
Representative Mortensen.
Aye.
Reich, excused. Wahlberg.
Aye.
Roby.
Aye.
Fitzgerald.
Aye.
Reimer.
Aye.
Whitman.
Aye.
Massey.
Aye.
Call.
Aye.
Poirier. Aye. Hunt.
Aye.
Hughes, excused. Stevens.
Aye.
11 yea, 0 nay, 2 excused.
Senate Bill 43 hereby passed with unanimous vote. Any objections to going on consent? Seeing none, we will place this on the consent calendar. The next bill that we have in front of us is Senate Bill 44, an act to establish investigative subpoena authority to gather business records in certain investigations. We'll take proponent testimony at this time.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, committee members, Marty Jackley, South Dakota Attorney General. Senate Bill 44 would introduce into our law an investigative subpoena process limited to human trafficking and ICAC, or Internet Crimes Against Children task force cases. Last year alone, the Attorney General's office received just under 3,000 cyber tips. And what a cyber tip is when a friendly business, a good partner, red flags certain activity on their social media or other places, and they let law enforcement know. And at that point, we have pretty limited information. We don't necessarily know, I mean, we have an IP address, but we don't know who it is, and we don't necessarily know where it is. And so that's what this addresses. This is a concept that is existing. When I was United States Attorney, I had this ability under federal law. States of Alabama, Arkansas, Idaho, Louisiana, North Carolina, North Dakota, Virginia, West Virginia, Wisconsin, and Wyoming have this. There's something special and different about Senate Bill 44 from those others. And that is, this isn't just giving the prosecutor that power, it has judicial oversight. And I think that is key, and that is important to make sure we have the courts involved in this process. And again, the why we need this is, you know, we know from that cyber tip that at least there's a concern or an allegation of human trafficking or child porn or internet crimes against children issues. But we don't have the suspect's name, and we don't have the county of origin for purposes of legal process. And I would also point out that all Fourth Amendment protections still remain in force. So looking at this bill, Section 1, the terms are always important, but they're exceptionally important in this. It talks about what is an investigative subpoena, and it is a written demand issued by the Attorney General after judicial approval. And so that's a review process, and I'll get into that. It's also important to know who this can go to. It's not going to go to ordinary citizens, necessarily certain businesses. It's limited to the providers defined to electronic communication services, electronic service providers, internet service providers, and remote computer services. And then it's the legal standard that is also important, what the prosecutor has to show, what the Attorney General has to show in order to do this, and that's reasonable cause. That's defined in subsection 3, and that's a belief based on specific and articulable facts that the business records sought are relevant and material to an active criminal investigation. In other words, this can't be some fishing expedition. Section 2 really addresses the process of how this happens. It's the legislature saying and clarifying what you need to do for an investigative subpoena. And it has to be a criminal investigation conducted by the DCI. It involves internet crimes against children or human trafficking, and that's important. This isn't for any other crimes. It's limited to those specific areas. And the Attorney General would apply to a magistrate judge or circuit judge of Hughes County. We work with UJS as to how this would best work as process, to have the judges in place that we know who to go to. They're knowledgeable about this particular section. I mean, all judges are knowledgeable, but they would have a specific ability to do this under their jurisdiction. And it's the Attorney General submits to the judge a written application. This isn't verbal, it's a written application demonstrating reasonable cause to believe the business records of a provider are material to an active investigation. Section 3 then gives direction to the magistrate judge or circuit judge in Hughes County as to what is to occur. Similarly, Section 4 indicates that a magistrate judge or circuit court judge may approve an investigative subpoena upon findings the application submitted pursuant to that section establishes reasonable cause. Also looking at Section 5, it limits as to what can be sought in an administrative subpoena. It's subscriber information, account holder's name, billing and service address, account status, telephone number, device information, email address, internet username, internet protocol address, method of access, and automatic number identification records. Again, it has a very specific purpose so that when we receive the troubling information on a cyber tip, we can gain the additional information to then make a determination of where to go from there, and especially in which county we go to, and gain the information. Again, all of the constitutional protections still remain in place. Section 7 addresses if a provider refuses, then we would be required again to seek court intervention. We would go to a court of competent jurisdiction to address what those concerns would be. Section 8 we felt is important because those providers, as we defined, this puts in place privacy protections that are important. Section 9 gives the actual provider protections so that you can't bring a cause of action, the actor that the information is sought against those providers for providing information via a court order or an investigative subpoena. Based upon that, Mr. Chairman, I will make myself available for questions at the appropriate time.
Thank you. Do we have any other proponent testimony for Senate Bill 44? Any other proponent testimony? Morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Savannah Cruz on behalf of the Police Chiefs Association. We are a Me Too in support of Senate Bill 44. Thank you.
Thank you. We have any other proponent for Senate Bill 44? Seeing none, do we have any opponents to Senate Bill 44? Okay. You have 2 minutes. Thank you for coming.
Chet Ellsworth, Rapid City. I rise in support of a no vote on SB 44 for its propensity to be abused, the fishing expeditions that the AG mentioned. And I further find no legislative purpose for passing SB 44. The AG wants an extra judicial protection for its cyber tips coming in from Microsoft for internet crimes against children and human trafficking. He wants that protection from only Hughes County. Hughes County, which we have talked about before, is a Chapter 7 county that has no longer is a combined office county that has no more separation of power standards. The process on the AG or the AG's designee, which we won't know who that is. He could pick out the Secretary of State or whoever he wants to give this information to, and submit it to a judge or magistrate or court judge in Hughes County. I've submitted a document there showing that in I think it was 93, the county got rid of its separation of powers, and it's operating as a communitized county with no separation of power standards. The Senate Judiciary voted 6-0 to grant SB 44 with motion by Melhoff, excuse for using the name, the chair there. He's from Hughes County, and Senate went 34-0. So as of January 23rd, 26th, the Senate was all in for SB 44. But on the same date, the AG was in front of the Joint Committee on Appropriations and made the following statements that indicate a pattern of abuse of his authority. We have last year alone brought in $11.4 million in opioid settlements. The opioid dollars started coming into our state in Q4 of 2022, and I know I've been in front of this committee before talking about my desire to see those dollars go out. It's right at $99 million, and it's increasing. That was an indication that somebody's been sitting on some money.
Sir, you're going to have to keep your comments to Senate Bill 44, because that really doesn't have anything to do with what we're here to. So if you could do that, and you got about another minute left.
I disagree.
Well, that's fine. That's the nice thing about
disagree.
America is you can disagree and we can still go along.
You're not letting me talk.
Well, you got 1 minute left to talk. We've got everybody has under
Well,
the
I
same
disagree
amount of
with
time.
that too.
Well, that's fine. You got 1 minute
On January 26, HB 1139, which is your budget bill, which was a few days after this talk he had, it was introduced in the House Committee on Appropriations at the request of the governor. This is the budget bill. No appropriation for $11.4 million or $99 million appears in the bill. This is unfunded money coming in. Nobody knows where it comes from.
Sir, I'm going to ask you one more time to talk about the bill and limit your
Well, I
comments to the
think
bill.
it's actionable. You're in contempt, and it's actionable.
Well, I need to have someone get somebody up here so we can continue on. So your time to talk is stopped. So
One last
please cut him
statement.
off.
But for the opioid abuse issue, this AG would not be speaking here today. You would be seeing Mr. Roundsberg.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other opponents to Senate Bill 44? Seeing no other proponents to Senate Bill 44, Mr. Attorney General, do you have any rebuttal, or would you like to waive that? It's up to you. All right, thank you. This time we'll close committee testimony and open it up to any committee questions. Yes, Representative Cole and then Representative Reimer.
Okay, for the AG. Just a quick question on how this works. If you've got the Sioux Falls ICAC unit, for example, that comes upon some of this information, how would that work as far as going forward to bring this about, just the mechanics?
Mr. Chairman? Thank you, Representative. Of course, we have a lawyer assigned to that unit. The way I would envision it is cyber tip comes in, ICAC takes an initial look at it and helps prepare the application. Then an assistant attorney general would take that application, bring it in front of a magistrate or circuit court judge in Hughes County. If it shows reasonable cause, they granted it then would be DCI, which is of course working with the ICAC. that would do the investigation.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. For the Attorney General, and you probably said this, and maybe it's not that big a deal, but you're talking here in Section 2, we're about the written application. So what is the turnaround time then that has to get approved, I assume, right? And then what is that turnaround time? Because I'm sure time of the essence here in some of these cases.
Mr. Chairman, I'm always hesitant to put a time limit on our judiciary on approval, et cetera. It's going to depend upon the case circumstances. If it's an active human trafficking situation, times of the essence, we would move forward very quickly. On the bulk of these, when you've got almost 3,000 of them, we spend a lot of investigative research trying to figure out, well, what county is this so we can bring it in the right county, or who does this involve? This will streamline that so we can act quicker because we're able to get the administrative subpoena out to find out the information we need to then make a determination of how pressing it is for purposes of, whether it's a human trafficking incident, whether it's an ongoing ICAC matter on the safety of a child, or whether it is a child pornography case. This will help speed that process up, but I'm always hesitant to ever put a timeline on our judiciary or our agents, not knowing what they have in front of them, what we have, but this will absolutely speed that process up. We know exactly what we need to do. We know exactly what we need to get by what is limited in here. We can get that to the court. And my experience is courts, especially when you're dealing with children, respond very quickly on the approval or denial process.
Okay. Any further questions? We'll close questions and open it up to committee discussion and/or action.
We'll go do pass.
Second.
What we have in front of us is a motion do pass by Representative Cole and seconded by Representative Fitzgerald to Senate Bill 44, an act to establish investigative subpoena authority to gather business records in certain investigations. All those in favor of the motion to do pass will vote aye. Those opposed, nay. Mr. Secretary, please call the roll.
Representative Mortensen.
Aye.
Reich, excused. Wahlberg.
Aye.
Roby.
Aye.
Fitzgerald.
Aye.
Reimer.
Aye.
Whitman.
Aye.
Massey.
Aye.
Cole.
Aye.
Poirier.
Aye.
Hunt.
Aye.
Hughes, excused. Stevens.
Aye.
11 yeas, 0 nay, 2 excused.
Senate Bill 44 hereby passed, 11-1-0 vote. Any problems with consent? Okay, then we'll go on to consent calendar. The next bill, we're going to have Representative Whitman say what the bill's about. Read it, because I'm not going to say tetra, whatever it is.
Punished for being literate.
Senate Bill 45, an act to revise a provision regarding Delta 8 tetrahydrocannabinol, THC 0 acetate, and hexahydrocannabinol for persons under the age of 21 and to provide a penalty therefore. We'll take proponent testimony at this time.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, committee members, Marty Jackley, South Dakota Attorney General. We already have in place age limitations for a variety of chemicals, whether it's alcohol, whether it's tobacco. We already have it in place on Delta 8. What this bill does is ask to add Delta 9 to that, and really what Delta 9 is an active compound responsible for a marijuana high. The reason we're adding this is we're seeing it more in South Dakota. Last year, law enforcement did operations on 5 vape shops. We found troubling items being packaged for young kids. In one instance, the shop was literally right down the block from the middle school. And so what we're asking is simply really 2 things. Number one, add Delta 9 to the chemical lists that you already have in place. And number two, because this is serious with respect to penalties, you'll see that subsection 1 is really the selling the substance. That's the business that's doing that. That would make that a class 1. But with respect to the purchasing, we just felt the class 2 misdemeanor still makes sense. And so, again, a violation of subsection 1 would be a class 1 misdemeanor. A violation of subsections 2 and 3 would be the class 2 misdemeanor. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll make myself available for questions at the appropriate time.
Thank you. Do you have any other proponent testimony for Senate Bill 45? Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the House Judiciary Committee. I'm Terry Dosh. I serve as Executive Director of the South Dakota Council of Community Behavioral Health. We would just like to weigh in on support of this and thank the Attorney General for bringing this legislation this year. You can understand everything you need to know about this bill when you see the focus of it, and that's individuals under the age of 21. In order to be brief, I am passing out a brief fact sheet which talks about the special effects of cannabinoids on young brains. Representative Roby, you might see this as a familiar document because it was produced in your Prevention Resource Center at Human Services Agency in Watertown. Watertown has recently launched a program working with law enforcement to become more aware of the hemp-derived cannabinoid intoxicants that are available to youth in this state. And so the things I'd want you to know as residual from my talk is, first of all, this is a growing and prevalent problem in terms of the opportunity for your youth, my youth, to be exposed to these substances. These are derived from hemp and they're synthetically concentrated in many cases, and the exact content is largely unknown. We do know that cannabinoids in general, when they're ingested by anybody under 21 certainly, but probably even under the age of 25, that has a direct adverse effect in terms of the development of synaptic density in the prefrontal cortex. It affects the brain. It affects the brain's ability to learn, to remember, to coordinate the bodily actions. It reduces reaction time and it reduces judgment. It does this universally. If the ingestion exposure is frequent enough and excessive enough, it can cause a syndrome referred to as cannabis use disorder, which then is associated with a lot more serious repercussions, including hallucinations, paranoia, a range of emotional issues. It may also result in mental health issues, which can be protracted and chronic, most especially anxiety and depression. I would also just tell you that the chronic use disorder often presents with evidence of addiction and chronic psychotic effects as well. A lot of people argue that point. They say this is harmless stuff. And I would assert and represent before you today that these are far from harmless. And so I think that the approach that the Attorney General is using here adds another layer of deterrence. And I think you'll agree with me that the best way to interdict these types of effects as I've described them to you is to avoid them altogether and keep them out of the hands of our youth. Mr. Chair, that would conclude my testimony. I'd be happy to stand by for any questions.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other proponent testimony for Senate Bill 45? Morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Lisa Gennaro with Protecting South Dakota Kids. Everybody else has said it better than I probably could, but just bottom line, we don't want to sell or give this to anybody under 21. So please pass the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other proponent testimony? Ms. Ackerman.
Good morning, Chairman, committee members. Stacy Ackerman, Executive Director for the South Dakota Sheriff's Association. We just want to give a me too. We think this is a good step in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Erickson.
Mr. Chair, Eric Erickson with States Attorneys Association. We would also give a me too and ask for your favorable consideration.
Thank you. Ms. Cruz.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Savannah Cruz, on behalf of the Police Chiefs Association, we are a Me Too as well and would urge your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other proponent testimony? Seeing none, we'll open it up to opponent testimony. Seeing no opponent testimony, we'll waive rebuttal, and we'll open up to committee questions.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Representative Roby.
Perhaps for the Attorney General. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Attorney General, good to see you here today. My question is regarding, wading into some waters I'm not an expert in, but this Delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinolic acid, I think it's THCA, is not the same as, this traditional Delta-9 THC. And so I guess my question is, so we're adding this language unless it was prescribed, which is good. Why aren't we also adding, so to marry with our medical marijuana laws, why aren't we also adding Delta-9 THC?
Mr. Chairman, I think that the easy answer is when we did the vape shop searches, we identified that this particular Delta-9 was a concern, an immediate concern. And so we did a measured response because that's what we're seeing. And that's, I think, why we chose to just limit it to that. I would also, I don't want to get too far afloat or I'm going to get gavelled. We had a good conversation whether this should be age 18 or 21. I think everybody realizes with what's going on, right now with Iran, we're sending people that are 18 off to war. We came down with the conclusion that all of our laws, whether it's alcohol, tobacco, Delta-8, we as a state have made a decision as 21. And that's why we went with that age side of it.
Further questions by committee members? Seeing none, then we'll close questions and open up to committee discussion and or action. Yes, Reverend Whitman.
I move to pass.
We have a motion by Representative Whitman, second by Representative Reimer to do pass. Comments, Representative Whitman?
I would just say no new penalties, no new enforcement structure, and it protects our young people. Thank you.
Any further comments by anyone? Seeing none, then what we have in front of us is Senate Bill 45, an act to revise provisions regarding those long drugs, or whatever they are, under the age of 21 and to provide a penalty therefore. All those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote nay. Mr. Secretary, please call the roll.
Representative Mortensen.
Aye.
Reich, excused. Wahlberg.
Aye.
Roby.
Aye.
Fitzgerald.
Aye.
Reimer.
Aye.
Whitman.
Aye.
Massey.
Aye.
Call.
Aye.
Poirier.
Aye.
Hunt. Hughes.
Aye.
Stevens.
Aye.
12 yeas, 0 nay, 1 excused.
Senate Bill 45 hereby is passed unanimously. Any objections to going on consent? Seeing none, it'll go on to consent. The next bill that we have in front of you is Senate Bill 49, an act to safeguard the integrity, privacy, and security of genetic data and to provide a civil penalty therefore. We'll take proponent testimony at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Marty Jackley, South Dakota Attorney General. Senate Bill 49 is really about protecting privacy and genetic data. It came out of a case, 23andMe, where essentially a company doing ancestral research, et cetera, was gathering very private personal information. They then sought to sell it for profit. We attorney generals nationally stepped in and blocked that. It's in bankruptcy, so that information, at least at this stage, has not gotten out. But when that case came about, it identified that we don't have statutes in place necessarily addressing some of the genetic testing and to put a scheme in place, because I think we want to encourage it as a state. I think if somebody wants to check out their ancestry, it might be somebody that wants to see who their parents are, et cetera. That's a good thing. But we need to protect that data from potentially bad actors, and that's what Senate Bill 49 does. With respect to the terms that are used in the Act, I would point you to subsection 4, which is really who it applies to, and that's a direct-to-consumer genetic testing company. and it kind of goes through those definitions. Subsection 6 is what it applies to, and it's genetic data, data other than de-identified data regardless of format, which concerns a consumer's genetic characteristics. Section 2 talks about how to safeguard the confidentiality, and it talks about what is required of one of these companies under Section 2, subsection 1. It says they have to make available to the consumer in plain language the following: a privacy policy and a privacy notice. Under subsection 2 of Section 2, it talks about to provide a clear and complete notice to the consumer that the consumer's de-identified data or genetic data may be shared with or disclosed to third parties by research purposes in accordance with federal law. And then that subsection 3 says obtain the consumer's express consent to collect, disclose, or use the consumer's genetic data, and it lists what it can be used for. And I want to fast forward to subsection 4. It's to develop, implement, maintain a security program to protect the consumer's genetic data against unauthorized access. Under subsection 5, provide a process for the consumer to access the consumer's own genetic data, to delete the consumer's account and genetic data, and to request and obtain the destruction of the consumer's biological sample. It's just empowering the consumer to protect their privacy. Subsection 5 is to provide mechanisms without any unnecessary steps for the consumer to revoke any consent of the consumer. Under Section 3, talks about what happens when a consumer revokes. And then Section 5 is really the enforcement side of it. What we did is we feel this is a consumer issue. That case was dealt with the Consumer Division. Privacy is what the legislature has tasked the Attorney General to enforce in our consumer laws. So we just put in place the consumer civil remedies, and that can include a civil penalty that would not exceed $5,000 per violation. Then, and this is an important one, subsection 6, who this does not apply to. And there was an important amendment on the Senate side to say hospitals. We never intended to include that. They are excluded. But it's protected health information, biological samples, the consumer's medical screening, diagnosis or treatment, and then public or private institutions of higher education, an entity owned or operated by a public or private institution of higher education, a forensic laboratory, as well as an entity that analyzes, collects, or uses genetic data or biological samples only in the context of research. We didn't want this to have unintended consequences, and that's why we have a very significant who it does not apply to. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'll make myself available for questions at the appropriate time.
Thank you. Do we have any other proponents for Senate Bill 49? Any other proponents? Ms. Cruz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Savannah Cruz on behalf of the Police Chiefs Association and We Are Me Too in support of this bill. Thank you.
Do you have any other proponents? Seeing none, do we have any opponents to Senate Bill 49? Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the Judiciary Committee. My name is R. Sean Torno. I'm a lobbyist for Protect Southeast South Dakota Property Rights. I'm here not to necessarily be Debbie Downer to the Attorney General's bill, or I should say our prospective U.S. Congressman in the next session, but I think when I served in this legislature and in this committee, I was known by probably our future Attorney General who served with me as the amender. And again, not to be a Debbie Downer to this bill, I think the idea is laudable. The problem with the bill, and I say this also as a former member of the Attorney General's office and a retired attorney, nearly 37 years in good standing with the bar, the problem is Section 5. And I listened to the Attorney General's testimony on the Senate side, said this is the key to the bill, the enforcement action under Section 5.
And in my years in the Attorney General's office, I did work with the Consumer Protection Division, but I know of no authority, none, zero, for the, under Section 5, for the Attorney General to impose a civil penalty against a person violating either Sections 2, 3, 4, or 5 in the amount of a civil penalty not to exceed $5,000. The reason I'm here on behalf of Protect Southeast South Dakota Property Rights, I don't really care about these genetic companies, maybe in Massachusetts or Delaware or California or Florida. They're not my concern. My concern is if a South Dakota entity began this type of service, that I know of no authority for the Attorney General to be judge and executioner in determining if there's a violation and imposing a $4,900 fine. Arguably, I see this the way it's written, and what I recall the Attorney General saying on the Senate side is, if the entity that was charged the civil fine, they could take it to court. Under what authority? Would this company, let's say it's XYZ company now in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, would they have to create an action against the Attorney General? Would they have to create an action against the state of South Dakota? You know, I only look at to see where I think there's an error in the drafting here under 372426. And of course, this is just adding to 3724. There is a provision for if the Attorney General, after an injunction, wants to impose a civil penalty there, that they, of course, petition the court. And they could seek, in the name of the state of South Dakota, a fine of up to $5,000. The other question I have here is, if the Attorney General is granted this authority to be judge and executioner, let's leave aside where's the due process for that. But if they were to take this step and some company in Delaware were to receive the letter that says the Consumer Affairs Division in South Dakota is imposing a $4,900 fine, if they first don't throw it in the garbage and somehow say, well, fine, we'll write a check to the state of South Dakota, are they going to send that to the Attorney General's office? Is that going to go into the Attorney General's office petty cash fund? Where would that money go? This notably, as I sat on the Judiciary Committee, and you folks have all seen, many times it's talked about, you know, and rule authority could be developed for this and how this would be implemented. I don't see that anywhere in this bill. And while, again, I think the idea of protecting these folks' genetic testing information is fine, the South Dakota Attorney General, with all due respect, does not have the authority to impose, absent any due process whatsoever, a civil fine. I don't know of what the reaction would be, again, of a company in Delaware or California or Florida, why they would think they would even need to respond to that. But I don't know how they would initiate an action. I don't know if the action would probably have to be in federal court. I don't know why that's not set up in the bill. This bill has a problem insofar as the enforcement side, again, with all due respect, of getting the proverbial cart before the horse. So with that, I would just ask this committee to look, figure out if a potential amendment can fix this. I'm sure the Attorney General will respond to this, but that's the problem I point out with the bill, and therefore I have to be an opponent to the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have any, excuse me, do we have any other opponents to Senate Bill 49? Any other opponents? Okay, seeing no opponents, we'll open it up to rebuttal. Mr. Attorney General.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Committee members, Marty Jackley, South Dakota Attorney General. Let me just address Section 5 on the enforcement side. I felt on the enforcement side that a criminal statute was simply too much. This is a much more measured response. This comes from the Consumer Division Statutes 37-24 that do trigger the opportunity for due process and require a notice from the Attorney General. It's what our Consumer Division does. Probably the best example, just because it's in the press, of how 3724 works is the Mayday case. the way that starts is because under this provision and under our consumer laws, the Attorney General has to provide notice. So I did a cease and desist, that didn't work. You then move forward towards providing adequate notice, and then you have court proceedings. I agree with Mr. Torno. You should not give the Attorney General the authority to just outright impose a fine or on a violation. And you haven't done that in 37-24, and I'm not asking you to change that. I think the way our consumer laws work, where the Attorney General is required by you in statute to provide notice, part of the reason for that is that notice gives the bad actor the opportunity to correct themselves. If they don't correct themselves, just like in Mayday, or at least in my opinion, they didn't correct themselves, I move under injunctive aid, et cetera, and then it's due process. The court makes a determination of whether the statute is violated, and importantly on this, the court makes the decision on whether the Attorney General's requested a violation amount is appropriate. The only thing you're doing on that is you're making sure, consistent with 3724, that it cannot exceed $5,000. And so I feel it's dealt with there, and that's why that language was included, because it's consistent with how we do consumer enforcement. And you do have the ability, number one, to receive notice. And notice is so important because you can't exercise due process if you don't know about it. I have to, and I had to a couple of weeks ago in court demonstrate that Mayday had received notice. And then once notice is received, you have all due process rights, including, as in Mayday, if you believe it's a First Amendment violation, you can, you're able to make those arguments, and ultimately the court decides what the appropriate remedy is, limited to $5,000.
Thank you. At this time, I'll close testimony and open it up to committee questions. Representative Morton.
Yeah, I mean, my intellectual curiosity is now piqued. I guess this is for the Attorney General, because I'm looking at 37-24-26. I was just going to say, our new seating chart has made it that John and I would have been talking about this for quite a while. But anyway, so, do you have that statute in front of you?
I don't.
Can I bring my computer over and show you?
Sure.
Okay.
Can I do searches on it or not?
You can look the emails, but don't look at the pictures. Okay, so I'll just give you a quick second to look that over. Got good? So there are actually two bills this year that have this, and I noticed it first in 1209, which is the E-Verify bill that I was unfortunately, I was not here those days, and I texted Representative Hughes about this, because that sentence in that bill is identical to the one in the bill in front of us, but is, as Mr. Torno pointed out, it's a different process than is in the statute, which says the Attorney General petitions to the court to get these, to recover these sums, which would be kind of the typical process. So help me out, make me comfortable about this. What am I missing here?
Mr. Chairman, I think in order for us to do an enforcement action, we always have to do it under 37-24. With that said, I consider it a friendly amendment if you're more comfortable with the language upon petition to the court. I mean, I think that's the only way it can happen, but maybe to make clear and to alleviate Mr. Torno's concerns, that would be a good friendly amendment.
Take a quick break, put it together, make sure you can look at it.
Yes, we'll be in recess for just a few minutes.
Hey, Dybert is working on 1209. He has an amendment live, and maybe you're not in on that one. That's the E-Verify, but that has the same problem. The E-Verify one even says that you can, maybe, sorry. Yep.
We're back in action. I refer the committee to Amendment 49B, and that is on Section 5, which would be line 28. We've added the the words upon petition to the court. Did everybody have a chance to take a look at that? Okay, so at this point, then, Mr. Representative Mortensen, do you have a motion?
I move amendment, is it B? 49B.
We have a motion by Representative Mortensen, a second by Representative Whitman. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Amendment is hereby approved. Okay, so we're open up to committee. Any questions? Representative Mortensen?
Oh, I was just going to move do pass as amended.
Representative Reimer, did you have a question?
It's not.
Discussion.
Just a question, I guess, and it's not that big a question. But for the Attorney General, you said that this legislation was brought about because of a lawsuit with 23andMe, and you joined other states' attorney generals. So I'm just curious more than anything, other states adopt legislation like this off of that lawsuit? Are you aware of that?
Mr. Chairman, I'm not aware of that, but what I would say is many of the other Attorney General's offices had consumer division statutes that they could trigger and use. We didn't have one, but we gained the benefit of having a group of Attorney Generals. I mean, it affected really citizens in every state, and it was a fairly bipartisan effort to say we can't have, from a privacy standpoint, this. So other states had them. We looked at numerous states, and frankly, we took some good and left some bad out on those recommended provisions.
Nothing more. Just thank you for your efforts on this. I think it's important. Thank you.
We'll close questions, open up to committee discussion and/or action.
I move do pass as amended.
Willingly?
Peer pressure.
We have a motion by Representative Morton, second by Representative Whitman for a due pass on Senate Bill 49, an act to safeguard the integrity, privacy, and security of genetic data and provide a civil penalty therefore, and this is 49B. All those in favor of the motion will vote aye. Those opposed, nay. Mr. Secretary, will please call the roll.
Representative Mortensen.
Aye.
Reich, excused. Wahlberg.
Aye.
Roby.
Aye.
Fitzgerald.
Aye.
Reimer.
Aye.
Whitman.
Aye.
Massey.
Aye.
Call.
Aye.
Poirier, excused. Hunt.
Aye.
Hughes.
Aye.
Stevens.
Aye.
11 yea, 0 nay, 2 excused.
Senate Bill 49B is hereby passed. I have a motion by Representative Wahlberg and second by Representative Cole to adjourn. Well, with an amendment, can we still do that? Everybody okay with the consent? Okay, we'll go on consent then. We have a motion by Representative Wahlberg and second by Representative Cole to adjourn. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Okay, no, we are hereby adjourned.
From children's programs to in-depth documentaries, SDPB sparks curiosity and lifelong learning in every South Dakotan. SDPB. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB brings South Dakotans together, telling the stories that unite small towns, big ideas, and the people who make our state shine. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. SDPB shares the voices and experiences of South Dakotans, preserving our stories, our culture, and our sense of place. SDPB, good, useful, and full of wonder. As South Dakota's public media network, SDPB serves everyone with transparency, integrity, and commitment to open access. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB.